Hey, this is Dave from metalepidemic.com. Thank you for checking out our YouTube video. Please feel free to hit the subscribe button below if you like this type of content, and we hope you enjoy the review. What's up? Dave, Duncan and Kyle from Metal Epidemic, back with another album review. And for this review, Duncan, Kyle and I have been checking out the new album from Finnish Metal quartet Atlas. The band's new album, Ukko, will be released on December 10th via Long Branch Records.
Just the whole Scandinavian territory now. That's the goal. The whole goal now is like the whole of the Scandinavian blockade, the whole Nordic regions on fucking watch.
That's right.
Metal Epidemic is here to butcher your language.
Kyle, how's your Finnish?
Terrible. It's really different from any other Scandinavian languages that it's like Estonian and Finnish are very close, but nothing compared to Norwegian and Danish and Swedish. Just as like, what?
Well,
just completely different. So
lucky for us, I am multilingual. So, you know, last week it was Danish, this week a bit of Finnish. Still to tackle Dutch, which I'm looking forward to. Some looking into cooking.
Looking into cooking. Which I didn't realise at the time, like, all of a sudden Goldmember, that Austin Powers movie, really makes a lot of sense. It was like, was that like a crip in a pipe? Smoking a pancake? And I was like, looking in the cooking. I mean, it makes sense.
That makes sense.
Everything's about shagging.
This is true. So, either of you guys a fan of some Northcore?
Is that what they're calling it?
This is a bit of Northcore.
Right,
if you're wondering yourself, you're thinking, what is this Northcore Dave speaks of? Well, Atlas have taken a modern metalcore sound and blended it with gloomy soundscapes inspired by the cold of the North. Northcore.
And it's not black metal, so it's immediately a step up.
It's not. Yeah. This is album number 2 from Atlas, which follows up the band's debut album Primitive from 2018. On this release, the band explore themes of death, healing, rebirth and faith, presented in a seamlessly blended mix of English and Finnish. The album was mixed and mastered by, drumroll, no surprise here, Buster Odholm from Humanity's Last Breath. Shocker.
Like there's like, see, when you watch movies like Blade Runner, like the future evolves where giant corporations are just everywhere, and there's maybe 3 or 4 giant corporations. The world of metal is evolving to where there's only going to be 3 or 4 producers based in territory, and this is my territory. So if you're in this part of Europe, you must go here. Like it's fucking nuts, man. How does the guy find time to masturbate?
That is the question.
Serious question.
Everybody's mind, Duncan. It's on everybody's mind.
He takes a vacation to Iceland.
That was recorded off air, so no one gets that except for us.
Yes.
Just want to stress to listeners, I did not masturbate in Iceland.
Thank you.
Thanks.
All of the Icelandic listeners, like, thank fuck.
Yeah.
Yes.
Your blue lagoon remains unsullied.
When I checked this album out, I did wonder myself if they always sounded like this, because there's no denying that this has a very Humanity's Last Breath tone to it. Buster's production style is very distinctive, and it's one that I kind of associate with Humanity's Last Breath.
Huge.
Yes. I mean, the new Vulgata does have a little bit of that, DNA, but again, Buster involved in that one.
Yeah.
But when the first actual track on this kicks in after the intro, my mind just went straight to Humanity's Last Breath. That guitar tone is thick, very metallic, discordant, and the drums are punchy and do again sound very similar in tone to they do on Valda. When I checked out Primitive, their previous album, you can hear there's clearly a shift in tone on this one. This is definitely darker, heavier. Primitive felt very, it felt very kind of progressive metalcore. It had more of a kind of like Miss May I or a bit of Monuments in there as well, or Rising Insane. There was still a kind of Scandinavian type bleakness to it in places, but not as much as there is on this new album. And I must admit, I much preferred the approach on this release to the previous one. The riffs and the grooves are much bigger, like huge in comparison to Primitive.
One could use the word djenty in parts.
You could use that word. You could. Not gonna, but you could. The tone is also, as I said, a lot darker, which I liked. I think those more like ominous chords and vocal melodies feel better suited to the Northcore idea. And although this does have a very like Humanity's Last Breath vibe in places, I don't feel like they're trying to be Humanity's Last Breath.
Oh God, no.
No, Atlas have this almost like a kind of folk vibe to a lot of the tracks on this album.
Yep.
And that comes in the form of various kind of vocal styles and particular melodies, as well as adding in elements like acoustic guitar or some kind of light strings here and there as well. And I think that side to their sound does like separate them in a good way. I couldn't think of any other bands really that are combining those styles while being this heavy. And like I'm not a big like folk metal fan at all, but I think the way they pull this off doesn't feel corny or like done in a kind of like witty kind of way. It's definitely more serious and a bit gloomier. But I think they've got the balance just right on those the kind of folk inspired moments. Never felt like they were like lingering on that side for too long on any track. They always make sure like they bookend it with something like colossally heavy. And heavy this is, like this the riffs are thunderous, so absolutely loaded with a fairly kind of groovy tempo and rhythm. There's a ton of like head bangable kind of moments on this album. Vocals on this though, there's a lot to dissect vocally. Like the styles and arrangements on this are great. Like I think there's a lot of layers going on here, various tones, both kind of heavy and clean, and all different like vocal registers. They work surprisingly well together. I found it a very interesting album from a vocal point of view. You can hear they've clearly put a lot of thought into the arrangements on each track. I especially enjoyed track 4, Susie. I'm sure it's not pronounced like that. The layers of melody are so well done on that track, almost kind of gothic in style, but again, totally works with that like Scandinavian tone. The only part of the album that I have an issue with,
issue? Ooh.
Yeah, I don't. It's not that I disliked it, but it just maybe didn't necessarily work for me. Was in the middle of the album, you have, and again, apologies for the mispronunciation here, but you have Henki or Henkai, track 6, and then Leto, track 7, both kind of like interlude-esque type tracks.
Yep.
And I found the placement of having those two tracks back to back, a bit strange. I think it caused too much of a dip, in my opinion. I would have personally only had maybe one of those situated there. And then after those two tracks, there is a track called Berry. I don't know how that's pronounced, but
that's how it's pronounced.
Yeah, cool.
Yeah, I'm going to go with that.
And it, as a track, it definitely builds into something cool, but it starts off fairly kind of melodic and very slow burn. And I kind of feel like they missed an opportunity to come back into the album with a bit of heat and something a bit more energetic. As I say, it does build a slightly heavier track, which has some kind of like blackened riffs on it, and so even some blast beats. But again, the placement of that track also felt a little off to me. It felt more like a kind of closer, to be honest. After that track, we get another interlude type track on track 9 with some strings and atmospherics. And I know like the whole like the theme of like the North is their kind of like shtick, but and it's very atmospheric and gloomy, but I feel like having this many interludes kind of killed the flow of the album for me a bit. Track 10 though, Uri, is an absolute home run of a track. Like, it's got weight, it's got massive riffs, and one of the catchiest choruses on the album. For me, that track was probably Atlas at their finest. And I think if they can deliver an album of tracks with the same kind of ferocity and kind of songwriting as this, then I think they are on an absolute triumph. The closing track is pretty good too.
How would you pronounce that one, Dave?
Don't know. I'm just going to call it the album closer. It's one of the more uplifting tracks of the album, and the vocal melodies and the different registers really impressive on that one. They've got a kind of three-pronged like vocal attack going on. And I think it's something these guys have as like almost like a kind of secret weapon. They use it very well, especially on the closing track. And the solo towards the end is absolutely fantastic. It fits perfectly with the tone of that track. So this finishes strong, and it starts strong, but the middle of the album is really frustrating for me. I feel like this could have been a really good album start to finish, but there were too many moments where it kind of just loses momentum for me. And it's a good album, don't get me wrong. I'm not writing it off at all. My grade will reflect that, but I think it could have been so much better, if I'm totally honest. What about you guys? How did you get on with this? Duncan, what do you think?
I liked this more than you.
Ooh.
That surprises me. I thought you would have liked this more than me. I think that the issues that you have with those placements of songs, I'm looking at it from a different perspective. I don't look at them as interludes at all. I look at them as tracks that are just composed completely differently. Approach from a different point of view. An interlude for me is it feels like it's when an album is trying to break something. Like break up a movement or gear you up for the next movement in an album. And I actually found that with the instrumentation and the dexterity of what they bring specifically from the folk point of view, and the music and the movements, that when we came to these, that was them just letting those parts out in front of the heavier stuff, which I really enjoyed, because to me, you rhymed off a fair few bands earlier on, and including our buddy Buster, who's done every album this year. There's a sea of bands out there that have a very similar sound. They use a particular technique of atmospherics in the background to convey doom and dread and whatnot. And at a certain point, those become interchangeable for me, and Atlas is like on the other side of that, because whilst it does share the DNA in the guitar work, the guitar sound and the drum sound, everything else about this band is completely different. Even vocally, the vocalist here, the main guy anyway, the one that's doing all the aggressive shit, had a tone which sounded different as well. It was very audible. Everything was very, very clear sounding. The mix of kind of, for lack of a better term, Mongolian throat singing, which I know it isn't, but it kind of sounds like it is. That coupled with higher melodies and the eccentricities of that kind of work their way through the songs, just like completely uplift this. So when those moments which don't have kind of djenty bouncy riffs or the kind of like really dark kind of metalcore stuff starts to flow through, when that's not there and it's stripping things back to bare bones and injecting a bit of vulnerability into the songs, I just looked at them as songs. So as a result, for me, those movements in the album kind of worked for me a bit better. I totally see where you're coming from, because if you listen to everything up to that point, it's like energy and its intensity, and then the album takes a pause for the cause of like building up atmosphere and themes and bleakness and warmth and shit. It goes through so many movements. I think that's kind of what captivated me. I'm not used to hearing that in this sort of music at all. And just when I was starting to get, for lack of a better word, tiresome, you've probably heard it in recent reviews of bands that are in this sphere, I'm kind of getting to the point where I'm like, I've heard it, right? These are all really good at what you're doing, but there's nothing in there now that's really jumping out to make you the next thing that's doing something different. And I think Atlas are onto something. I don't think this album is a flawless album. I think it's too long, If I'm being honest, I think there are certain things. This to me, it suffers from. It's weird because like my complaints generally of the kind of the deathcore, kind of new deathcore, metalcore sort of stuff that's coming from this blockade is that some of these albums are far too long, at an hour, right? And this one isn't as long as that. It's under 45 minutes. But I felt there was maybe one or two tracks in here, just in general, that could have been maybe removed, and I don't think the album overall misses a step. I think they're incredibly talented. I think just the song composition and the way they approach their melody, specific vocally, is where the album is a threat.
Yeah.
Because there's no other band doing what they're doing, and they do it really fucking well. The melody on this album slays. So perfect. Fits in the instrumentation in the background, using it to uplift those melodic vocals. Perfect. I mean, absolutely perfect. And it has that kind of almost kind of, you were talking about kind of prog metal vibe. That's that melody stuff when it hits and you're just like, oh, this is on a completely different level.
Yeah.
So Atlas are a band that I'm really excited about. I don't think it's a flawless album. I don't have the same necessary issues, is not a strong way of saying it, because you didn't see dislike the tracks, you just didn't agree with the placement. But I don't have that wasn't an issue for me. I think my only gripe overall was that I think it's maybe one or two songs too long. I think they managed to convey their message and their sound succinctly and concisely over the majority of what you hear in the first 8 or 9 songs. So yeah, a surprising one, like a genuinely surprising one, because I had a guess that they were Finnish. I had a guess that that's what, because we've done a lot of stuff from Svart Records, and Svart do a lot of Finnish bands. You can hear like specific words or tones or just an accent that you know flows through. But yeah, the very, very, very surprising band. I think they would be fucking bitching live. Yeah. I just get a feeling that there's enough going on here that they could take a live set, loads of different ways, and keep the audience just like completely in the palm of their hands. So yeah, I think Ukko or however we're pronouncing it. I think this is kind of great. It's a weird oddity. This is the sort of album where I think Atlas, you could play an Atlas song and you would know it was them. Any genre at the moment with a sea of bands that you could play a song from, you'd be like, is that the... No, maybe it's not the... It could be... they sound, whilst being definitely part of it, they have their own thing, which I think is the exciting bit. I'd like to see them lean more into that. I think there's potential to really break it out. And if Northcore is what they're wanting to be called, then call me a fan of Northcore.
Nice. Kyle, what do you think?
I think Northcore is one of the cringiest metal terms we've heard in a while, but I'm a fan of it. So
you clearly never heard the genre that me and Dave had in our band, which was brutalcore. That's right, brutalcore.
You're right. I had never heard that, and now I wish I could go back in time and unsay
Northcore,
the things I've
all
said.
of a sudden isn't all that bad.
I don't know. Well, yeah, it's not that bad. Not compared to that one. Anyway, this is an album here which I love and hate.
Okay.
The song structure and the songwriting and the parts arrangement and all that, and mixing in the northern elements without it turning into black metal or troll metal, folk metal.
Give me troll metal.
I'm thinking of troll fest. Sorry.
What is the trollcore? Let's get that.
I'm sure there is. And having it sound so serious and so like actually like good music, for want of a better term, is quite it's quite surprising, to be honest. I didn't know what to expect except for the whole metalcore thing. And then mixing that with metalcore, I think they did quite a good job of it. Like they really they sound like their own band and their own thing, which is difficult to do these days because there's so many millions of bands doing all kinds of shit. So, but the fact that they've taken those elements off from their culture and mixed it in so well, I'm really happy to hear it, and it's fantastically done. I really enjoyed it. I think I'll agree with Duncan. It's a bit too long. I think by the end I was like, I'm kind of a bit tired of this, and the metalcore production and stuff I'm not a fan of at all. I mean, that whole first track, when it was building up, I was absolutely in love with it, and then you hear the metalcore come in and I was like, fucking ruined it.
But that guitar!
Yeah, the guitar tone's great. It's the editing and the time alignment and all that shit I've been through before. It's just kills it. It sucked the life out of the album for me. By the end of it, I was just like, it's too polished, it's too nice, there's too much auto-tune and pitch correction and all this shit. And I'm just like, I think this album could have been a strong contender for not as much of that, and it would have sounded great, because those kinds of like historic, I don't really know what to say, those things from their culture that mix into it, it's like a jarring thing for me. It just didn't really mix that well, didn't blend that well, if you know what I mean. For me, it's like, it's too much of the modern stuff when you're just trying to bring all this stuff from what you say is Northcore, and then it's like, meh. Other than that, I really enjoyed all of it. The instrumentation on some of those tracks was fantastic, and the way they arranged that goes from the super grindingly heavy stuff into the softer parts, and the layering of the voice and the acoustic guitars and all that was wonderful, really well done. So, I mean, I haven't heard things quite like this before. I mean, everybody's mixing this and that with metal nowadays, but this is really, really, really unique. So I'm really happy I've heard it. So I'm very, very, very... I'm excited to see what they do next, because, as Duncan mentioned, this is not a flawless album. It's a very good start, I think. I think it's a very good start to an exciting career if they carry on, and not to shit on any producers or anything, but I think if they went with someone different who didn't have quite like a set-in-stone way of making albums sound, I think it would probably be to their benefit, because I think you can make low-tune guitars and stuff like that sound very good and more natural as well. So I think if they did that, it would probably help a lot more and make them stand out a bit from that whole, metalcore scene. Obviously, they're a metalcore band mixing in elements, but I think if they tried to step outside, that would be amazing for them. Other than that, no, great stuff.
Okay, yeah. 3 different perspectives on that album, but that's why we do this.
Yeah.
Ratings for this new album from Atlas. There's bits of this I really like. And then there's just the placement of some songs I just didn't like. It just kind of killed the flow of the album. I kind of agree with Kyle on the production thing. I like Buster's production, but I think these guys need something a bit more them, rather than someone else's kind of sound. Guitar tone is fucking awesome though. Give them that 100%.
Oh, yeah. I think nuts.
Yeah, I'm interested to hear where they go next. Definitely, I think the vocal thing is brilliant. I love the 3 tri vocals. All the different registers are really cool. I think on this effort, I'd probably go 3.5 for me. Kyle, Duncan, what are you thinking?
Kylo Duncan, right? So I'm going by the name Kylo Duncan now, just for this review, guys. Hopefully the little bubble that comes up says Kylo Duncan. So that's on you, Dave. I was right. I'd give this a 4. I think there's a lot on this that I think really, really works. My only gripe is I think it's maybe 1 or 2 songs too long, which I imagine if you're a big fan of Atlas, that's not an issue. It's like if anything, it's like there was another couple. 4 for me. I think this is the next. I would go with Kyle actually. The next album is the deal breaker, so to speak, because they could go a number of different ways with what they have just now, and I have my preference of where they should go. Call me now. And we'll have a word Atlas. But yeah, no, I think it's one of the more memorable releases this year, I think.
Cool.
So, yeah, 4.
And Kyle.
I'm going to side with Dave on this one and go 3.5. It's a very strong start to a hopefully very exciting career, but I think just a few things they need to change. It's late, I'm tired. But I'm excited to see where they go next. I'm definitely going to keep an eye on them. So
yeah, for sure. And I would like to see them live. 100% would like to see them live.
I think they'd be great live. Yeah,
that sounds like music you could play live. That's the thing. It really, and it's probably come out amazing live. Those are like when you hear Dimmu Borgir live, it just blows you the fuck away. So I'm sure this will be exactly the same.
Okay, so that's a new album from Atlas that drops on December 10th on Long Branch Records. I'll put links below to their Facebook and any pre-orders available for the album. Let us know what you think. If you've heard any of the singles, drop us some comments below. Once you hear the album, let us know what you think. Happy to hear your thoughts and opinions on it. That is the review. Thanks for checking it out. Much appreciated. We'll be back with a new review very soon, but until then, take care. Speak to you soon.
Bye, everyone.